Good day and welcome to today's Conversation podcast. We are back and today we're discussing generally the state of our country. And I am privileged to host former Member of Parliament for Kasenengwa, Honorable Sensio Banda. You will remember that he came on the by-election when we lost our Minister of Agriculture at the time, Victoria Kalimi, and he was picked by the Patriotic Front as a candidate. And he was an area Member of Parliament until 2021. Honorable Sensio Banda, welcome to today's Conversation podcast.
Thank you very much. It's a great pleasure just to come to this platform and also to interact with the public and get to educate each other and get to know what's happening around us. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
You have been very quiet. Where are you? What are you doing?
Well, sometimes I think it's critical that when events happen, key events for that matter, in your life, you need to pull back, introspect, so that you reboot and get a new set of tires so that you can run better. So basically, I've been rebooting, putting a new set of tires, and getting back in the arena and be part and parcel in the constructive environment which is going on the political scene, to be an addition of a voice of reasoning to the betterment of Zambia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know before that you were one of those professionals. I think you are a monitoring and evaluation expert. You've worked in various developmental agencies. But before we know who Sensio Banda is, tell us about yourself. Where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? You know, how did you come to be formed the Honorable Sensio Banda that people know?
Yeah, I grew up in Kabwe from when I was 2 years old, up grade 12. I went to Angelina Tembo Primary School, went to Kalonga, and obviously I did my undergraduate program in business administration, but also project management, and I've also done masters in business administration and also postgraduate in management and also postgraduate in project management. And currently also I'm doing some other programs, as it were, but also I've applied myself in the development space. You know, I've worked with various organizations. I started as an M&D assistant, and I rose through the rank, and I've applied myself in the area of research, M&E, and project management. I've had a very illustrious career in
Where have you worked? Where, so we can learn?
I've worked at National Trust with persons with disability. Among them, I've worked as a consultant with World Bank. I've worked with quite a number of institutions in terms of in the developmental sector. But much more, I've applied myself as a consultant to do consultants' work in the area of research, end-time evaluation, baseline surveys, and so on and so forth. And I've also applied myself in terms of providing support in terms of capacity building, developing training programs for institutions, and so on and so forth. So that has been my space in terms of my working career.
Why did you decide to join politics, and why Kasenengwa?
So basically what it is that politics has been my interest. Even when I was working in the background, I was providing support. So, you know, I joined the Patriotic Front, then should have been 2045, and actually I was the part and parcel of the Research Bureau, which was responsible for research for Patriotic Front, and I was actually secretary of Patriotic Front then. So even in the background, I was able to provide the support which is required, even as I was working. So I've always had an interest in politics for the simple reason because politics hinges on improving people's lives, because politics is all about administering public affairs. And you may know very well that in the government, their primary role is to promote the well-being of the people, to make life possible, to make life good amidst the scarcity of resources. Arising from that, I thought I should apply myself in the political arena, and that opportunity arose when actually my sister, Victoria Kalima, died. Her soul rest in peace. And I saw an opportunity to lend myself to the people of Kasenengwa as their servant. And I applied myself within those 3 years as member of parliament. So basically that's that. So service to the people has always been at the core of my heart, to be a servant to the people, to be able to provide myself a helping hand to those who are needy, and also to augment my efforts with those others who are in the arena that we can make Zambia a better place.
Being a developmental expert, how was your role in Parliament, and how did you apply the knowledge you have acquired, in the field of developmental, both studies and activities?
For me, having that background, it gives me a different set of lens to look at things, because I'm from the developmental world, where I've been applying myself at a point of impact, where you see the lives of people are being changed, as it were. Even the studies which we're doing, they are hinging on the lives of people, how basically the lives of people are being changed, such that when I came into politics, I just extended that to ensure that I apply myself in that view, because politics is about service to the people. So I basically applied myself to advance the cause of the people. Though I advanced myself previously in the social sector, but I applied myself in the political environment to advance the cause of the people based on the set of skills which are acquired in the developmental sector as well.
Oh, wonderful. I'm aware that you've written a book about a sensitive subject.
Yeah.
On ethnic and, its relation to national development and politics. But before we come to that, I'm interested in your developmental work, and you are a researcher, you are an academic, and as a monitoring and evaluation expert, I want to throw you to the deep end. Let's begin to evaluate our heads of states. What could they have done better? What opportunities did they miss? Let's start with our founding president, President Kenneth David Kaunda. I think he came with a group of people. They fought independence for us, and they had now this role to transition from a liberation movement to now a working government, and they laid the foundation for this country. But there are many things they could have done better. Let's start with your view of Dr. Kaunda.
First and foremost, Dr. Kaunda and the team, they came to the fore at the behest of the main atrocities which are committed by colonial masters. And you may know very well that during the Federation, there was a shift. By then, we had the Second World War, and that brought a boom in terms of need for copper. And the Southern Rhodesia saw an opportunity to come together to extend the market. But that had also its side effect. Why? Because they were looking for cheap labor, and also looking at the copper.
Who drove the agenda of federation for the three countries? Is it colonial Britain, or was it a need for the white settlers that were in the colonial areas of southern, northern Rhodesia and Nyasaland?
In fact, the white settlers in southern Rhodesia were at the core to advance for that. But also, the British government saw an opportunity, because at then we were grappling with the apartheid in South Africa. So as far as the British colonial masters looked at that as an opportunity to have a multiracial partnerships where blacks and whites can come together and have equal opportunities, because obviously there are huge disparities between the whites and the black. But again, the white settlers are looking at it from a different angle altogether. For them to business as usual, they wanted to take over, as it were. So much as they are proponents to federation, but they also had different views. Southern Rhodesia had the business interest. British had also both business and also political interest. So basically what it is that both the Southern Rhodesia, the settlers, and also the British colonizers were at the core to call for that federation. But obviously it was met with force, because the iron is, much as they were condemning the apartheid regime, the same things were happening here in Zambia, particularly because our people were disfranchised. Because what it is that when these colonial masters came, the entry point, as you may know, that Africans, we've always been organized in communities as ethnic groupings. We had our leaders, and we had a way of doing things. We had structures in place. We had what we may call a moral economy, where the powers that be could provide the protection and the land, but in respect to that, the leaders will be, the followers would provide the loyalty required. So when they came in, the colonizers understood that they had to thrive the agenda based on the mainstreaming the activities with existing structures, as it were. So what it is that, by and large, I think the, for argument's sake, an example is that Zambia started not as a country, but as a property of a company called the British South African Corporation. You know, because what happened is that when some exploration which were done, and they found some deposits along Kafia River, and actually, I won't go into details, but the rights were signed to that effect. But again, what it is, the way that was done was to try to the community to buy in. It was more of repressive. There was coercion. It was brutal, as it were. It was a messy business. So they are talking about the apartheid in South Africa, but the same things were happening right here in Zambia. So obviously the nationalists, then the leaders, saw through that agenda, as it were. So I think if you look at the proponents of federation, there was the settlers themselves, white settlers, and also the British.
The Moncton Commission. Its purpose was to investigate and make proposals for the future of the federation of Rhodesia and ourselves, Northern Rhodesia, Nyasaland, because they had made up what they called the Central African Federation. People would say CARS. UBZ was previously CARS. I don't know that it was because of those, acronyms. The Central African group that was made. But the conclusion was that the federation could not be maintained except if the British government were to use force or massive changes in racial legislation. It advocated for a majority of black African members in Nyasaland, Northern Rhodesia, and Southern Rhodesia legislatures, and by giving these territories the option to leave after 5 years. So what was happening in Africa at the time was a pressure for independence, and the federation was seen as a big stumbling block against independence. So as you stated, there was opposition to the federation. I think some factors contributed to UNIP being, ZANC and UNIP being born, because they felt that the ANC under Honorable Nkumbula was a bit permissive. It wasn't radical enough. Hence, a rebellious group of young people who said, no, if we go on with this, we'll never have independence in time. And they formed, ZANC. Of course, they were thrown in prison immediately. And when they came out of prison, there was now UNIP that was formed, hence a march to the 1963 elections and 64. But before we come to that, I'm glad that you went to the foundation of our country, because people don't know some of these issues.
Yeah. So first, I think, let me put this into context.
Yeah.
Even as we discuss about the time of federation and independence, you see ethnicity has played a critical role in politics.
Hence your book.
Hence the book.
What's the name of your book?
It's the complex interplay of ethnicity in Zambian politics. Yeah.
They repeat?
The complex interplay.
The complex interplay
of ethnicity in Zambian politics.
You think that ethnicity and ethnic grouping played a part in our politics from its foundation?
Precisely, exactly. You know, first and foremost, allow me to say that we need to learn from history, because what was shall be. We are not far from our forefathers. We are ingrained with what they have done before. That being said, I think, and allow me that I give context to this matter. Why? Because is that if we better understand our diversity, if we better appreciate our values, our differences, that will be the basis as a people to create a platform for consensus building. Not only that, also to have a shared vision. Not only that, to have national unity. Unless we appreciate these dynamics. So that effect, allow me just to delve a little bit, so that helps us. Because believe you me, what's happening now today in our political environment is not new.
So what is happening currently? I think the state of the nation is that there is polarization first in our politics. Two, there is a strong re-emergence of tribal and regional politics. It is a matter of worry because it undermines the work of One Zambia, One Nation,
exactly.
the national project of unity for our country and national building. So that is the current state of our country. And you said this has happened before.
Oh, yeah. Allow me to quote one of the architects of democracy, and he had this to say: whoever wishes to see the future must consult the past. For human events resemble those of preceding times. This arises from the fact that they are produced by men who ever have been and shall be, animated by the same passion, and this shall result in the same result, as it were. So we are not any different from our forefathers. So allow me to give context to that. Let me give an example. We are Bantu people, okay? 90% of the Zambians are Bantu people. And we all migrated to the now West Africa, the Nigeria and Cameroon, thereabout. So there was a first set of migration which happened, which were the first people who settled here in Zambia. And the first wave of Bantu migration was by the Tongas, the Ilas, and the Namangas. And if you see this ethnicity in terms of their features, for example, I'll not go into details, but looking at their features, for example, they lived in expansive villages. Secondly, is that they didn't have any form of leadership. They depended on communal support in terms of agriculture. Secondly, they were herdsmen. They had substantial amount of cattle. And also, they participated in trade. Hence, you have Ingombe Ilede, as it were. And these traits, if you see the people in the southern province, these traits in the rural communities still exist. It's point to the fact that history always repeats itself, because what we do, we are just an ingrain of our past, of our ancestors. Another example is that there was a second wave again of migration of Bantu people, which was the Bembas and the other grouping, as it were. There is the Senga and the Bisa and the Nkoya and the Kaondes. That was the second lot. But the difference with the first, this second lot they came from the from the Congo Basin, from the westwards. So this group, firstly, one of the features is that they were skilled in statecraft. They had kingdoms. In fact, federalism was seen in how they were structured. They could have, for example, the Luba Empire had sub-chiefs who were independent, as it were. So you see that, and later on, actually, you look at also the other feature is that they were good in literature. Okay? They were good orators, as it were. In fact, that is why you were able to see there are some literature regarding the Luba Lunda kingdom where it talks about Emmanuel Mwamba and also who is the Red King, and also Ilunga Mbinda, who is the prince of blood complexion. So it documents these empires, as it were. It shows the fact that this group were actually orators and also had the system to document their history, as it were. But also they were traders. They were traders. In fact, they did a lot of trading, and also were one of the first Bantu people to have a contact with the Europeans in terms of slave trade and so on and so forth. So, and if you see these traits, no wonder after I started doing this research and as I'm doing the book, I now understand why you guys, you always want to lead.
Why we scramble for power.
Because it's ingrained in you. Because you are coming from a position where you had a structured way of doing things in terms of leadership. You mastered statecraft to an extent that, in fact, the Luba and Lunda, the Lunda comes in is that a Luba hunter called the Chibinga, went to the Lunda kingdom and married a priest called Luinji, and in no time, he espoused the statecraft in the Lunda kingdom, as it were, to an extent whereby it became Luba Lunda kingdom, and the Lunda became subject to the Luba kingdom, but they were independent, as it were. This shows how much they were schooled in the statecraft in managing affairs as a kingdom, as it were. So these are ingrained in what we are seeing today. That's why even today, when I saw when PF had called for presidency, and there are a lot of you now understand why, where it's coming from.
Take over, Fuma.
Yes. So if history is anything to talk about, we live on. Our ancestors live on through us. Another example is the what is called Malawi Confederation. In fact, this is a group which came earlier, even before the Luba Kingdom. They came about about 1,700 years thereabout. What this type of ethnic group, they were as good as the Luba Lunda. But what they did when they came through Lake Mwelu, went to Malawi, Zambia, and Mozambique. But in the way of doing things, they were the same as the Luba Lunda kingdom, except for them, they were able to do animal husbandry and agriculture, which yourself, the Luba Lunda kingdom, there wasn't that much as it were. So another group also is from the Western province. You look at the Luyanas. The Luyanas were part of the fallen Luba Lunda kingdom. They went to the Western province. So what happened is that along the way, the Sutu Swana group from South Africa came, and actually the Korolos had a fight and took over. But along the way, the Luyanas took over. But by then, the language was actually adulterated. Hence, now we have the Lozis. That is why, for example, we look at the Lozis, they are very confident, they're defiant because of the traits. There's the Luyanas who, people who had from the Lower Lunda Kingdom, they had the statecraft. Hence, in fact, the Luyanas were the first to create the Barroso Agreement under Lutunga Mwamba. as it were. But they are also defiant because of the Sutu blood, the Korolos. So it goes also with the Ngonis. So what I'm trying to say is that history is something which to go by. We live on. So we cannot take ethnicity in politics. But what is critical is to how you manage it. That says, now we come to when the colonial masters came. They did not have to invent the wheel. Africans were already organized. We had the way of doing things. We had a moral economy in how things happened. We had leadership, as it were. So what they did is to manipulate the ethnic grouping. It was a messy business. In fact, when Sensio Rhodes came, okay, because Sensio Rhodes came to affront the political and economic interests of British. So Zambia was first a property of a company, okay? But what they did is that they did this through the traditional leaders, as it were. But however, what happened is that later on, what happened is 2023, is that the British government did not renew the
1923.
Yes, the charter, the company charter for the company. But that was a ploy. People would have just thought, oh, this is just cancelling. They are at loggerheads. But that was a ploy. So what happens is that British South African company had a hold on the economy, the economic system and everything, but our colonizers only were administrators. And you see, like I said, we must pay attention to history. The same model exists. If you look at the embassies, Western embassies, out there, they are administrative posts for the West. But one of their role is economical diplomacy, is to affront the agenda of multinational companies out there. So history always repeats itself. So the colonizers, after that happened, they cancelled that. Zambia, Southern Rhodesia was annexed and became independent in 1956. And now Zambia became a British protectorate. Now we are under as a British protectorate. But the process because the focus of that colonization was not for our good, but it's for their economic agenda, because Zambia had the resources they wanted, the copper and the cheap labor. But that could not be done in a nice way. It was a messy business. It was under coercion, it was brutal, and it was messy, and it was manipulative, such that even the pain of that lives on even us as a people. So what happened?
Clarify 1956, where you are saying Southern Rhodesia was given independence. People only know the independence that was given in 1980.
No. Because prior to that, Southern Rhodesia was was part and parcel of the British South African company, so to say, and was also under the British colonizers. So when they cancelled that particular charter, it meant that it had to be annexed. And this white settlers said, we want independence. That's why we have the Smith if you remember very well.
Yes.
And so on and so forth. So they got independence in 1956. Okay? So, but Zambia became a British protectorate. But the interest of British South African company continued, as it were. It was a messy business. Hence, for example, in 1953, when we had that the Nyasaland Confederation, as it were, for them, like I earlier said, the whites wanted to take over Zambia, okay? They had no interest in Nyasaland, okay? Because Nyasaland, they said it was a cost, as it were. So when the Confederation came through, their interest, the settlers, is to take over. But the British thought, let us bring about the equity, because there was a lot of inequalities. You know, such that if you look at the colonial times, it was so pathetic, such that late 50s, Africans could buy through the Hajj, you know. I remember one of the brands, which Robson Porter, bought a bed, you know, and said through the Hajj, and he said, since I bought through the Hajj, you must bring it through the window, okay? So what happens, that federation was meant to exploit the Africans, was meant to curtail the rights of the Africans. But what happened is that the nationalists find an opportunity to galvanize the various ethnic groupings. As we went through this trouble, as we went this operation, before that we were independent ethnic groupings, but because this operation brought us together. Okay, this culminated in 1953, 56. If not mistaken, we have Northern Rhodesia African Congress. Okay, the leader there was, if I'm not mistaken, was Harry Mwangankumbula. And if he, for avoidance of doubt, is that that Congress was a coalition of tribal groupings.
What was the purpose of that Congress?
Firstly, the Congress purpose was to deal with the issue of federation, okay? Because the federation had become a menace on the lives of people. For argument's sake, you had miners who are getting £3 in a month. £3 in a month. And they're paid that, and they're given 400 grams of mealie meal every day, okay? And look at the efforts which they were putting in. So the pressure was immense. The oppression, the manipulation was immense. They promised, but because where they found there was resistance, they used force. People lost lives. So the formation of the Northern Rhodesia African Congress was to deal with the aspect of federation. That was the first entry point. But however, with the development of what happened in Ghana, you know, Ghana got independence, and President Kaunda...
Harry Mwangankumbula, first we can trace a history of social formations from welfare associations that were formed. First, I was the first one in the country in 1912. These began to be political formations before we had our first political party. So then the first trade union, 1935, another welfare association. Then 48, the first trade union was born, led by, I think, by Leonika, who later became the Litunga, the father to Aka. And then you had the first political party in 1953, where formed by Harry Mwangankumbula and, employed Kenneth Kaunda as secretary, and Simon Mwansaka Pwepo was also then included. The two began to champion. Then you come to 1957, where there's this breakaway from this political party, the ANC, and we see them, they march to the formation of UNIP. So with all these experiences and knowledge, Dr. Kaunda becomes first a prime minister in 1963 after the elections, and eventually becomes the president of Zambia in 1964. With all these he has learned, the factors that you've raised, how do you then rate him? Because he has a country to put together. He has a country that is polarized by emerging rise of tribalism and racism. He has to fight racism. Because remember, there was a white party who, although they knew we're going to independence, they wanted a hold and a participation in the economy. Then, of course, then you had UNIP and the ANC.
So, basically, before I even answer your question, I know there are different stakeholders to the fight against federation, like you've indicated. But at the leading end, at the core of it, were tribal groupings. Let me give an example. When they formed the Northern Rhodesia African Congress, okay? Harimanga Nkombola represented the northern bloc, okay? I mean, the southern bloc, rather. And Kaunda represented the other bloc, all of them. For example, let me give an example. Like the northern bloc, we had Simon Mosaka Pwepwe, Justin Chimba, Robert Makasa, Leo Changufu, Clement Mwananshiku, Alex Shapi. That was Wapula, Northern, and Copper Belt. And if you look at the Eastern Bloc, you know, we had Ruben Kamanga, you know, Grace Zulu, Sensio Banda, and Wesley Nyirenda. That was the Eastern Bloc. If you look at the Western Bloc, we had Arthur and Squattawina, and Munas Palo, Nalumina Mundia. And the Northwestern Bloc, we had Peter Matoka, Samuel Mbilishi, and Humphrey Mulemba. And this shows to the fact that ethnic groupings came together. They put aside their differences. They understood that ethnic differences is a point of unity. They understood that their differences was the basis against which they create a consensus, they build consensus, and have a shared vision. Firstly, they had a shared vision to deal with the federation. They had their own differences, you know, as ethnic grouping, but they had one thing in common, is that to deal with the issue of federation. But again, before I even come to the independence, I want to talk about the departure point between Kaunda and Harimanga Nkombola, because that is also a very critical milestone, which has got an impact even in our today political lives, as it were. Because one aspect is that we agree that ethnicity plays a critical role in terms of forging political landscape. But what's critical is how best you manage that. The examples are out there. For example, when ethnicity is not properly managed, you've got Rwanda, you've got the Central African Republic, you've got today Ethiopia, which has got what is called ethnicism federation. They're in turmoil. You know, you've got the Congo, the North and South Kivu, where the Hutus of the Congo and against the Rwanda. So ethnicity, if not managed, can cause untold problems, social and economic and race and political tension, as it were. So
at what stage do we see ethnicity play in our politics? You are trying to assert that from the onset. Mm-hmm. First of all, the political players of the time, you know, I think were nationalists. Mm-hmm. They didn't see themselves as representing tribes, in my view. Mm-hmm. They saw themselves as leaders, because remember, they were educated by mission and missionary schools. They had adopted, you know, these new religions. They were Christians, depending on whatever denominations they were. And they were Pan-Africanist in nature, because they were aware of what was happening across Africa. So when they came to the table, did they come as tribes, or did they come as, you know, nationalists who saw, you know, how to get independence for a country?
One thing we should admit, before you're a nationalist, you come from a tribe. And that tribe has got traits like the one which I highlighted. And as such, there is need to admit those diversity as a people. Because if we do not admit those differences, those diverse features as a people, then we lose an opportunity on how best we can build consensus. Because it's based on those differences that when they're not handled, because some of the issues, even as I'm writing a book, I'm interviewing some prominent people who were during Kaunda time. And some of them coming from certain bloc, they say, we have suffered economic disparities. You know, we were marginalized in terms of how the public affairs were managed. Rightly so, because like I said, when the federation was in play, so what happened was there was an election for the National Rhodesia Legislative Council, as it were, which should have been 1956 thereabouts. But now, because Kaunda and his team, the young generation, the focus changed. Because they had interaction with Kwame Nkrumah, they got their independence. They said, oh, wait a minute. The best way to go is to actually fight for independence. But Halimanga Nkumbala was too engrossed with the first agenda of fight federation, you know, such that there was an election, okay, and Kaunda and the team, Kaunda and the Northern Bloc, the Eastern, Northern, and Copper Belt Bloc, even Northwestern, they said, no, we are breaking away under the leadership of Kaunda, okay, because we don't want to participate in this election. And that election took place, okay. If I'm not mistaken, Halimanga Nkumbala's party had only 2 seats in the Legislative Council. So what happened after that? UNIP was formed under Zambia African National Congress, but later on it was banned, became UNIP. So in 1962, there was an election, okay, which Africans had a majority, okay, and British realized that actually there was a window of change. And what happened in 1963, they dissolved federation, okay, and there was another election which the UNIP won with a landslide and won a third of the white votes. So there was a protest against Nkumbula's party because they felt they were betrayed. Because even Nkumbula's party also stood in those elections, but he lost. So Nkumbula's party was an opposition in parliament. Okay? And the entire group of who are led by those ethnicities I've mentioned formed the government. But Kaunda realized that there was need to put a lead on this. There is need to come together as a people, because the diversity we have is for a blessing, because every ethnic group bring something on the table. Like earlier raised the features of ethnic groupings. They bring certain traits which are ingrained in them to the table: leadership, entrepreneurship, and whatever you may mention. So
the politics and the earlier warfare societies that I referred to, one formed in 1912, the other one 1935, and the one 45, I think, in Broken Hill, now Kabwe, and then 1948, the first political, the first trade union. What you see is that the Copper Belt is a melting pot, and the issue of ethnicity may not be playing a very high agenda at the time, because if there is any place that brought all tribes together, it was the Copper Belt, because people were coming for jobs, whether you were from Nyasaland, whether you were from any of the provinces in Zambia, you were there because you needed a job, and you know. So the ethnic lines, I'm trying to argue, is that maybe it doesn't play a key role. It is there. There is an inclusive approach, but it's not as prominent as it was. And then there's something we need to put to task. I've heard our forefathers claim that, they fought for independence, they died for independence. Fair enough, they did. But we must understand that the decision to give back land to majority rule was a British decision. It wasn't our decision. So there's a famous speech done by the British Prime Minister at the time, Harold Macmillan. It's called The Wind of Change. You must have read about it. He literally first spent a month visiting Ghana. Ghana just became independent. Ghana and Sudan. Sudan 56, Ghana 57. And they had come from the war. There was reconstruction in Europe. They no longer had money. The money was not coming enough from the colonies to run the colonies, because the administrative costs had gone high. And then there was this awakening by Africans and Pan-Africanists who were demanding for independence. So in that speech by Harold Macmillan was the British Prime Minister at the time, he announced that we've started the process of decolonization, that we are giving up these lands, these territories, these protectorates. It was a decision of Britain. It just now remained to how you mobilize yourself in the various colonies and territories. Because a decision was made that should be given. So if you asserted yourself enough, of course they had resistance in South Africa, where there was strong white colony, colonial powers and settlers, and Zimbabwe. But in places like Tanzania, Malawi, Zambia, there was some resistance. That's why you see Tanzania get its independence 1960, Malawi 1961. In Zambia, there was an issue, because like Zimbabwe, there was a substantial white settler community here, and because of the mines. But also, for us, we marched to independence. I'm trying to support your assertions by giving this background.
But again, I beg to differ to you if you say that actually the British gave us the land. It's not true. It's the pressure. In 1962, there was demonstration, mass demonstration. Cha-cha-cha. Okay? That put pressure on the powers that be. The power that be came to Africa to exploit our resources and our cheap labor. And they would not, for any reason, leave it so easily. There was pressure to it. A lot of things happened. They knew that beyond this, to be catastrophe, as it were. So to say that actually the British gave us, no, they just read the environment and gave that speech, as it were. So the thing is that, look, for me, I'm not trying to exalt ethnicity, but what I'm trying to do is to acknowledge, put value to ethnicity, what others value. For example, some ethnicity, for example, they value cattle, they value certain things. For example, some ethnicity, the way of doing things is different from others, okay? So when we acknowledge those differences, that's one point. Secondly, and also acknowledges, because you acknowledge the fact that certain ethnicities have raised an issue that they have been not participated in the governing of this country. That being the case.
Let's start with, for example, the man we are discussing at this stage, Dr. Kaunda. He takes over as president. There's something funny in our constitution where he's guaranteed that he'll be the Republican president. It's in our constitution, the 1964. If you look at that order number 1, that act of parliament, is prescribed as Zambia's control. As a reason, he seems to have sharply differed with his erstwhile and long-term childhood friend, Simon Mwansaka Pwepwe.
Exactly.
And when they go to Congress, Dr. Kaunda's vice president, Kamanga, is floated as a candidate also to be the vice president of UNIP, and is defeated by Simon Mwansaka Pwepwe. And they had a constitution like what the ANC has. Whoever wins at the party level as vice president automatically becomes the Republican president. The lines are clearly drawn. Kamanga tried to raise, Kumo's Kumawa agenda that, look, we need to band together as Easterners in order to defeat the Bembas. And so we see the ugly scenes of tribalism and elections dying on tribal lines, and Kapwepwe sweeping that election. And, for the first time now, there's loud murmuring about Kaunda's heritage, because he's originally from Malawi, although he's Zambian, he's our first president, but that is now being used against him. It culminates to a cabinet meeting where Kaunda literally resigned, and I'm not going to head, first of all, a cabinet that's divided on tribal lines. And if I have to be president, I have to be president for Zambians and not just for certain tribes. So there is an ugly nature that emerges in 1968, 4 years after we are having an election in 1968.
So now, here's the thing.
Yeah.
Not only that ugly situation, we also had a situation from Hari Mangankumbura's party in parliament, So the pressure was immense, and this battle was on tribal lines. That is why it wasn't a surprise that actually the constitution was amended to one-party state. It's one of the reasons on how can he put a lead on this. That is why I'm saying that we should not give a blind eye to it, but not exalting it, but giving it a thought, because our diversity are a basis for us to build consensus, a basis for us to have a shared vision, because there are historical disparities. Okay, give an example. Halimanga Nkumbula was in opposition. It became one-party state. Where do you think his supporters went? Okay, they live on. And 1991, there was MMD. It was just a branch of UNIP. Okay? 2011, PF came on the board. It was just a branch of what? Of MMD. But there was only a departure when Manawasa became president, because they even said family tree and so on and so forth, if you can remember. It's on the vantage point that actually certain ethnicity thought we were marginalized. So the point of this appreciation, when we get to the table, we need to thrash out the details. Where are these historical differences coming from? What are the issues, as it were? Because today, we have UPND. UPND is a branch of the ANC. And they feel, now it's our time. But
it would be to stretch the argument. First of all, just a minute, Honorable Sensio Banda. This is a conversation we all participate.
Yeah.
The issue of ethnicity clearly is an issue. Mm-hmm. But Anderson Mazoka, the founder of UPND, mm-hmm. is MMD. Mm-hmm. Is a businessman. He's been CEO at various levels. Mm-hmm. He was educated in Northern Province. And he wants to participate in the national governance of our country.
Yeah.
And Michael Sata, who was National Secretary, says, no, I will not have it. Remember, Anderson Mazoka participated in a ward election in Bauleni, mm-hmm. and won that election. And Michael Sata, who was Secretary General, says, no, this man is too big to be a ward chairperson. He's furthering his presidential ambition. And before long, I might not remember whether he was expelled or he resigned, but he forms UPND in 1998. And I think is very sensitive that they will say, are you reviving ANC or are you forming a tribal party or from Southern Province? You can see how sensitive he is by the leadership he creates, that it immediately has a national character. Mm-hmm. The Chisangas, the Bobs Chingas, and others that are immediately in the forefront. He's communicating an issue that my party is not tribal. I am, of national character. I was just contributing when you said the UPND is a reincarnation of the ANC. So I was just putting context that it may not be.
But the point is, you talk about the late Mazoka, may so rest in peace. I'm raising this issue of ethnicity is that we should not sweep debt under the carpet.
Okay.
If we have to resolve this issue, we should come to the table, raise these historical issues, raise these grievances, because some things which you might be experiencing now, they could not be an issue of now, it could not be an issue of then. So we need to appreciate this ethnic diversity and the grievances and the events which happened. For example, I talked about how much Kumbola participated in the election, which the UNIP said were not part of it, and it became opposition. And after that, Kaunda took on. And what happened is what became one party. Where did the ANC followers came? They went? Nobody knows. And fast forward, we have President HH. So the difference is that, for example, if you talk about...
So for the one-party state, I think literature, and I'm glad that there are still some, many of participants that are alive, and in your book, I hope you can reach out to them. You will find that the fear was not necessarily tribe, but political violence, because the UNIP and ANC and UPP, remember there were two parties that emerged, Nalumino Mundia's party and Kapwepwe's party, UP and UPP, immediately brought political violence among its supporters. I think Simon Mwanza Kapwepwe stood in Mufulira. He wasn't even allowed to be in Mufulira. But there was so much violence. He actually won that election without even going to Mufulira or even campaigning, because the violence that was unleashed by UNIP forbade him from literally going into the area. So I'm glad that you are writing that book and that you can research to what extent the role of ethnicity played in that. But we see that Kaunda is justifying the setting up of one-party state that is threatening national security because of the political violence and the political intolerance between parties. And the traits of his dictatorship emerges because he saw that Kapwepwe was garnering and taking away a huge chunk of support, especially from Northern and Luapula and the Copper Belt. So he was a political threat to him.
Again, I mean, you get caught up in the dragnet of ethnicity. You see the support of Kapwepwe. Where is it coming from? From the Northern Bloc. So for me, the bottom line, what is key, we need to appreciate this diversity. However, the antidote to ethnicity in politics is leadership. It anchors on leadership. That is why we need to acknowledge the historical events, the disparities, and the complaints, the things which are being raised by other people. We get to the table. Like I said, some of the issues cannot be issues we're dealing with now, are historical in nature, and they're embedded in ethnicity. Okay? Not that ethnicity should be exalted, but we should appreciate this diversity, as it were, and create a consensus, a shared vision. So with that said...
Chibamba Kanyama wrote a book, where it's a business book, and then he referred to the way colonial masters identified workers. And they had termed who was loyal, who was lazy, who could work where. And he recited some of those issues where he was arguing that although the history is negative, it can be used to the positive. He cited that, for example, the colonial masters trusted Easterners in their personal spaces, meaning as cooks or as garden boys, they didn't trust other tribes to be near themselves. So you see that Easterners, were mostly cooks to the whites or garden boys. So he discusses various colonial issues, trying to bring context to how we can turn that history to better. So you should read the reference that Chibamba Kanyama referred to, because it was a point of contestation that these perceptions have now become realities. So if you are saying you can't trust me in your personal space, are you saying I'm a thief? So you see the labels. These tribes are thieves, these tribes are this, these tribes are this. Emerges, and you see it in our narrative to date.
Ambassador Mwamba, the colonizers, before they came, they did a study. They understood the features of each ethnicity. Like where we come from, most of the tribes were conquered, okay? And by nature, it's ingrained, okay, for submission, by nature, as it were. So what is happening is that these colonizers, they understand these features we're talking about. When they look at the Bembas, you were good in your statecraft. You could document, okay? They will find a way on how best they will use your ethnicity, as it were. So they were sharp. That is why what's happening today, it's not new. All the Western have done is to reinvent the wheel. I gave you a critical example where the British colonizers, they cancel the company charter for British South African cooperation. On naked eyes, we think there was a dispute, but it was a ploy to advance the cause and the agenda of the West. On one end, they should have economical wing, which will leverage the resources. On one end, they should have administrative wing. And this is seen in how the Western embassies are set up. You know, they advance the cause of the conglomerates, as it were. So this is seen. So what I'm saying is that that's why it's important to understand these features of ethnicity.
So how does, like I said, how does then Dr. Kaunda come up with one Zambia, one nation? How does he use the issue of ethnicity to the positive of the country? How does he make Zambians recognize that they're probably Zambians first?
Before they are...
Because the emphasis has been, I am Bemba first before I'm Zambian. But Dr. Kaunda flips aside. You are Zambian first. Although we recognize your ethnic originality, but he pronounces Zambian more than he does to your cultural field or your identity. And to mask or to make tribes understand that they are not abandoning their cultures by becoming Zambians as first. He introduces some of the issues. First of all, various languages on radio. He picks the prominent ones. And he revives, because not all tribes had traditional ceremonies, but he encourages it as a national agenda that each tribe must have some ceremony they should have every year. That is now to strike a balance that although you are Zambian first, but you have your identity and celebrate it.
Precisely. Yeah, I agree with you. And that is the reason that, for example, even under one part state, you'd find me as a Banda, I could go and stand in Western Province. Okay? So what he was trying to do is to diffuse that. He understood the challenge of to hinge your politics on ethnicity. It can be dangerous. It can put the country on the path of untold misery. Some of the problems which will be very difficult to recover. We are aware of what's happening, for example, in Central African Republic. They have got challenges to recover. You know, like in Sudan, southern Sudan, they've got problems to recover. So ethnicity, okay, must not be used to advance political agenda, but must be used as a basis to create beautiful consensus, okay? Come together, have a shared vision in view of our different values which we have. When I look at this shared vision of a nation, do I see myself there? Okay? So that is what I'm trying to propose. We should not mask the problems, the cracks we're seeing right now. There are cracks right now in Zambia. You know, the society is polarized, as it were. To deal with this, you cannot deal with it with legislation. No. You know, you encourage people not to talk about it. No. It is going to the dialogue, negotiating table. Put on the table the issues. How have we found ourselves here? What went wrong? Are there any historic factors, issues, which could be a reflection of this?
Multi-party politics, multi-party democracy is being blamed across Africa because we were, you know, if you trace our 60 years, in the 70s and 80s, we were all under dictatorship or under military rule. So then came the new wind of change pioneered by Frederick Chiluba and others, Zambia was the first one that went back to multi-party state, abandoning the one-party state or military dictatorship. Others came along. As we are sitting now, there is no one-party state across Africa. That we achieved 30 years ago. We all went multi-party. But now, there is a re-emergence of military rule. You've seen it in Mali, you've seen it in Burkina Faso, you've seen it in Sudan. We are now beginning to see cracks, ethnic politics. There's just been an election in South Africa where Jacob Zuma's party swept where he comes from, KwaZulu-Natal. You rightly identified that Zambia is facing the same critical issues, where the two dominant parties are literally from two regions of our country. So you cannot hide that there's something happening underneath and that politicians have the habit of weaponizing the differences. But before we come to that, we now have multi-party democracy in 1991. Chiluba sweeps the country with his grouping. They were a diverse group from trade unions, from business. Some were victims under Kenneth Kaunda and his strangleholders, when he was running a dictatorship. But something, ethnic issue there arises. The entire Eastern Province doesn't go with the rest of the country. So you have 25 seats from Eastern Province that stuck with UNIP. So let's discuss Frederick Chiluba in 1991. What are your reflections?
Look, actually, that is why I did mention that we need to appreciate ethnic diversity, the core issues which define us as a people, how we identify it. As Easterners, we are very consecutive, for a fact.
You are very conservative.
Yes. In the sense that we will not just easily change. That's who we are as a people. And when people put a tag for being backwards, or whatever the case may be, no. That is why we need to appreciate each ethnic grouping's features and what they bring on the table. Such that you want to discriminate against the Easterners because they take long to change? No. Perhaps it's in us. We need to look closely. What is this which is coming, as it were? So that is why I'm saying is that there is need, even the cracks we are seeing right now, there is need to understand and appreciate each other. Appreciate what are the historical events. Are there any disparities? What are the claims? And so on and so forth. That is why is that I'm sad because for me, personally, I anticipated that President HH will put a lead to this. Okay? And because the Constitution of Zambia acknowledges that we're a multi-ethnicity country, provides that even in the appointments of public offices, there must be balance. It sees that danger, as it were. So for me is that the fight to unite the nation cannot be legislated. Okay? There's need.
So the lessons have been very clear.
Yes.
We have a tried and tested method. The One Zambia, One Nation, not just as a motto, but as a national building project.
Exactly.
The way Dr. Kaunda did it, I think he tried to a large extent.
Yeah.
I've always cited an example, how he used appointments to balance the country so that no one felt left out. How he ensured that, for example, when you are employed in the civil service, if you are Tonga, you are sent to Kasama. If you are Bemba, you were sent to Western Province or Northwestern Province. There is a wonderful story of when you speak to my dear brother Felix Mtati, how he speaks Kaonde, Lunda, Luvale. Why? Because his father, at appointment as a civil servant, was sent and served in Kasempa, in Zambezi, and in those areas. So Dr. Kaunda took this matter very seriously, that it had to be beyond a slogan.
Exactly.
A slogan. So he actualized it. But over the years, we've intermarried. Over the years, we are educated. We're not like the population that was not very educated in 1964. And there's the push for meritocracy, that people should rise by merit, not by tribe.
Exactly.
They should be appointed by merit.
Exactly.
But to what extent can you balance merit and the issue of ethnicity, the issue of inclusivity? Because we've had cabinets that are short of other leaders. Mm-hmm. I heard recently people from Kaoma saying we are not included. Mm-hmm. You know, there were a time when Tonga said they were not included. Even if they were included, how do we create that balance?
So first and foremost, it's a question of chicken and egg. Okay? Let me give you an example. When Kaunda appointed what you said, a balanced cabinet, Mayenza Chona and Elijah Mudenda were viewed as the traitors. Okay? Why? Because they went along with the Northern Bloc. Okay? So this has been an historical issue, which we need to bring to a closure. Okay? So as far as you're concerned, Kaunda was balancing. But there are certain, as I'm doing this book, I'm interviewing certain constituencies. They viewed the Mayenza Chona and the Elijah Mudenda as sellouts. Okay? So that is why I'm saying that there's need. Like earlier said, the cure to this, the antidote to this problem is leadership. And right now, the only one who can provide that leadership is President HH, because he is the president. The 20 million Zambians voted for him for the simple reason that he brings us together.
Oh, he's a bad example. I personally criticize in the manner of doing it. First of all, he's put a lead on this discussion. It should not take place.
That's what problem is. That's what problem is.
He considered any debate on ethnicity, any debate on tribe, as both hate speech and tribal talk. Secondly, he doesn't want to be condemned when you highlight his appointments that are clearly tribal in nature. He doesn't want that debate to take place. So he's a very bad example. He needs lessons. Personally, that's what I think.
Yes, but the question is, the issue is that even as those issues are emerging, he needs to provide leadership. He's still president for the next 2 years or so, okay? This is 1 year, 10 months. He's still president. He must seemingly to be walking the talk. You cannot legislate against issues which are emerging as it relates to ethnicity in politics.
Honorable Banda, we have a brilliant constitution.
Yes.
It has provided for national unity. It has actually given guidance to the president how he should conduct himself through his appointments, through his speech. It is very, very clear. If there are two traits that have emerged with our constitutional development, it's an issue of Christian nation. For me, that is the best antidote, because Christianity teaches love. You know, and the issue of ethnicism doesn't even come in, the issue of tribe. The other issues of national unity, where this should be reflected from appointments, you know, to conduct, to development. Development should be fostered across the country without discrimination. So the antidote has been provided for in the Constitution. First, maybe if we promoted our Christian values, where you love one another, you love your neighbor. It doesn't matter whether your neighbor is Jew or Samaritan, you will love the neighbor. And where development has to be taken, appointments have to be given, not just on merit, but, you know, on issues that promote national unity. And then remember, there are groups that feel largely excluded. Young people, the youths, women. Hichilema's cabinet is one of the worst, I think, in the last 30 years. I think it has about 5 women out of a group of 20-something, doesn't even beat the SADC representation. Then political parties are also guilty of this, because the women representation in our parliament has fallen significantly, where we are coming from around 20-30% representation of women. It has now come to around 13%. It's a shame. So other than the issues of tribe, There are also marginalized groups, disability, the differently abled, issues of disability, young people and women also feel disenfranchised from this country before you even talk about issues of ethnicity.
Now, I agree with you, yes. We are a constitutional democracy, meaning that we ought to be governed by the rule of law, okay? But what has been the case? Because UPND came on the pedestal that they will apply themselves based on the rule of law. But what has happened is that, that is why I'm saying the constitution can be good, but it requires leadership. Look, let me give you an example. In Parliament itself, Parliament has been disseminated because unconstitutionalism has happened in there. They've bluntly violated the Constitution. For example, issues to do with the leader of the House. You have on the executive where institutions of governance, some of them have been taken to State House, some of them have been federalized. Okay? You talk about the judiciary. So the thing is, this is my thought. Look, Kaunda developed a one-party state to try and deal with this issue. But what our president wants to do is to curtail all voices, ensure that the three arms of government are irrelevant, but also going to an extent to institute laws which will actually curtail any diverse views as it regards the issues of ethnicity, as it were. But
do you think issue of tribe and ethnicity is a factor in our country?
It's an undertone. It's an undertone which needs to be addressed. It's like Chinese tea. You think it's not hot, you know, but when you drink, it's hot. So for me, the bottom line, President HS must provide leadership as regards these issues of polarizing the
What
Zambia.
must he do?
Provide leadership. One,
what does that mean?
Act according to what the Constitution provides. Two, be magnanimous enough, because you could have suffered any hate or whatever it may be. He is the president. Let him have a big heart. Accommodate everyone. He is the president for every Zambian, for everyone from whichever ethnicity it may be. You know, he needs to be magnanimous in terms of how he applies himself as a president. He has an opportunity to make good. But if not, he'll go down in the history to have led a country which has been polarized since the history of Zambia. So he has a duty, he has a responsibility. We are going in an election, okay? In an election where, actually, if he's not dealing with this issue, we'll vote on tribal lines, as it were. This is an open thing.
No, the studies across Africa that are showing the return to ethnic and tribal lines is very simple. It's the laziest way to get to power.
Exactly.
Because you can just go to your people. You are my people, vote for me. It's the laziest but most dangerous way of doing it. Bringing politics that are based on issues, that are based on what we can do.
Precisely.
And where you look at me without my affiliation of a tribe.
Exactly.
Is a lot of hard work.
Exactly.
So politicians find it very easy just to, and this is what we are seeing as I gave an issue of Jacob Zuma in his capacity as first former president, but also on an issue of ethnic line. You can't ignore that.
Yes.
That his people just rose to his defense because maybe they felt that he was being harassed, and the empathy that we need to bring support to him. And that had happened before, when last year there was a constitutional court that found him contempt because he refused to go to some court. Is it the hearing? And he refused to go for it, and they found him in contempt, and they took it to the Supreme Court, which then jailed him. The entire process was unfair to him, but that bent down the entire case then in Johannesburg.
Exactly.
So these matters are very sensitive. They can't be ignored.
Exactly.
For me, I wish you well in your discourse, and I hope to bring someone who has specialized in this, maybe from the University of Zambia, to see the academic perspective to this and what we can do to avoid the negative traits. But for you pursuing this book, what do you intend to achieve?
So firstly, is that in this book, I provide the background to ethnicity and appreciate our diversity and how that this ethnicity has been re-engineered by the intervention of the colonial masters and what we've gone through. And that even as a nation, despite our multi-ethnicity, we came together to fight against the federation. In fact, that effect, 120 chiefs came together and signed a letter to resist a federation, as it were. And again, you see people from different ethnicity come together for the fight for independence, as it were. They come together as a people. So ethnicity is a blessing to the nation. It's a god of variety. But elite politicians and the political entrepreneurs, they want to use that to gain votes, to gain power, or hold on to power, as it were, which is not a good thing. An example is in Nigeria, identity politics has not helped, and even in other places. So we are at this juncture where these gaps are being seen, as it were. So
I was frequently in Kenya, and then, I was based in Ethiopia. For Ethiopia, they thought federation would be a very simple solution. And the federation is just based on ethnic grouping.
Precisely.
Their constitution even guarantees secession.
Yes.
That is how Eritrea was born. So as a tribal grouping, you can vote that we no longer want to be part of Ethiopia. And the constitution gives you that right. So it's a very dangerous experiment. But it was seen as a form of unity. So all the 10 states are based on the 10 largest tribes. There were 9. So there's a new one where a tribal grouping proved that they had met all the conditions of the constitution, meaning on issues of population, on issues of number, language. There are perimeters in which you can become your own self-governing state in a federated structure in Ethiopia.
Maybe before you close me down, I was talking about the book.
Yeah.
And also, I want to bring out, because is that they ran from Kaunda to Chiluba, and Chiluba, we look at the Chiluba, the hours come, we look at the New Deal administration, we look at money in the pocket. What were their biases, as it were, in terms of ethnicity, to unearth that? And to that effect, in this book, I will interview various prominent people who were there during the counter time, the MMD, different regimes, PF, and also UPND. At the end of it is that even as I engage with these people, is to find what is the solution. And those solutions must be documented. But ultimately, this book ought to be a gift to the Zambians. Why? Because we need to appreciate that our diversity ought not to create enmity among ourselves, but should be a basis against which we build consensus. We have a shared vision.
It will not flare up dangerous ethnic talk?
No. What it is that that is why I'm saying we need to start talking about these things we are talking in our bedroom. We bring them to the table. Because we're not talking to our bedroom, we're not saying, but we go on the podium and make decisions which affect the nation, as it were. So we need to go to a round table, thrash out these details, aggressive they might be, state our claims, state our disparities, where we're disadvantaged.
The
so that
issue
we
of
as a people.
Barros agreement, do you tackle it in there? Does it have any effect? Because Zambia is made up of various nations, I must say. You know, the Chewa and Gawa are a nation on their own.
Exactly.
The Bembas are literally a nation. The Barros, these are nations. They were governed as nations. They were led as nations. And of course, by decisions that were not our decisions from the Berlin Conference that sat in 1884 to 85, where they just put straight lines. That's why all the borders are almost straight. You will have few crooked ones like the one between Zambia and DRC because of mineral resources that they were aware. But they're usually, one of the straightest line is between Zambia and Angola. You just have one huge straight line. So we were made together. Nations were forced to become together and become one nation. So the various nations in Zambia, various kingdoms, because these kingdoms literally were nations, were put together. They found themselves under a boundary, especially by 1935, all the boundaries were defined, all the kingdoms were defined, and they've been forced to become one nation. So the BRI is a window to what the countries were pre-colonial times, because these were kingdoms, thriving nations on their own. And the BRI has a unique state, which we can discuss right now. So have you looked at the BRI issue, or will you look at it in your write-up?
Of course. I mean, because BRI, like any other kingdom, like for example, let me give an example of the Ngonis.
Yeah.
Okay, it's a kingdom on its own.
Yeah.
Because I remember, even if you talk about the issues of Nsingo, what happened is that the British wanted the rights, rights in the kingdom. But because the chief then wanted to circumvent that, he signed another right with a German company, okay? And that German company apparently sold to a subsidiary of the British South African company. And later on, it culminated in that war, as it were. So the bottom line is that even as we hear the BRI and that call for succession, the question which begs an answer is that what has triggered that? That is the proxy indicator. That is just an effect. The root causes.
The single one is extremely sad for me, because first it's recent, and the war between the Ngonis and the British, and it's not properly documented. But what I saw there was a British, putting down a kingdom, ensuring the brutality, but also the theft of cattle. Their own book says they drove away 16,000 heads of cattle from that area and took it to, is it to Southern Province?
Yes, Southern Province, yes.
Yeah. And there's never been compensation. Imagine cattle, 16,000 then, So our history needs to be documented and documented properly. Indeed. I just heard Nsingo and I thought I could intervene.
Yeah. So for me, the bottom line is that we are one Zambia, one nation, no doubt about that. But leadership should not be a catalyst to divide us.
I have trouble, Honorable Sensio Banda, when you place solutions on our leaders.
No.
You seem to have a lot of faith in our leaders. In fact, the reemergence of these divisions are because of the leadership.
Exactly.
The leadership have been the biggest failure. In our own communities, I don't know who you're married to. You could be married to another person from another tribe. In our communities, our people live well.
Exactly.
Coexist.
Exactly.
They've intermarried. It's the politicians and the politics.
But
when you
do you know why?
When you bring it to the solution to these same leaders who are perpetrators of this division, I have difficulties.
Do you know why? Because they're okay for me to marry a Tonga. They're okay for me to marry a Lozi. But when it comes to politics, it's about sharing resources. Okay? It's about business contracts. It's about position. It's about this and that. And because of some of the historical issues, people will start thinking like, okay, this is it. So for me, is that, again, that's what I'm saying, it must be goodwill from a leader. Yes, you are ahead. Yes, you went through an experience.
You
must have a big heart.
Asking a thief to look after the bank.
No. For me, is that you must have a big heart. You must be able to let go of your personal hate and disappointment and look at the bigger picture for the better Zambia. Because Zambia today is neither Ngoni or Lozi or Tonga. Zambia today, we are one as a people. with these diversities, this should bring us together. But when these cracks happening, we need to interrogate this matter. And
I'll encourage you to begin to, I think, insist on other bigger stakeholders, such as the church, civil society groupings, to bring to order the politicians. For me, the biggest perpetrator of our national division is a politician.
Exactly.
They might drive us to war. People cite the issue of Rwanda and the genocide. You are the country that was, the political tension had risen over a period of literally 40, 50 years. And the politics, you know, where a large group of Hutus felt marginalized by this ruling elite who were the Tutsis. And it had come to a boil where now, for the first time, there are two Hutu leaders, one from Burundi, one from Rwanda. And they were coming from some peace talks. And as they were landing, because you know they were using one plane from Dar es Salaam, as they were landing, this missile from a rebel group shot down two presidents, and two presidents died there. You can imagine the anger that had been boiling underneath,
Exactly.
which resulted in a genocide. You saw France and Belgium and other countries attempt to bring President Paul Kagame to account, said, you are right. Your people were, and moderate Hutus were killed, about almost 1 million people. But don't you think you are also palpable? You also contributed by killing two presidents in this missile. My point is, when you have rising tensions, you might just need one spark to bring
Exactly.
the unimaginable to
Exactly.
a country.
Exactly.
So it's imperative that both the ruling party and the opposition are all very responsible.
Exactly.
As we saw,
Exactly.
maybe if the rebel group didn't bring this plane that
Down.
killed the two presidents, maybe the population wouldn't have risen against neighbor, against brother,
Exactly.
you know, against a fellow citizen. So the politicians, for me, may require more shepherding from the church, may require more shepherding from the civil society, because I see it is the politicians, not our communities, that are using these differences, amplifying the differences against one another and perpetrating this disunity in our country.
So I agree with you, but the bottom line is that the one responsible is a politician. So there must be a shift in the type of leadership which we will have henceforth. There must be a leadership which will value what everyone else is bringing on the table, irrespective of the hateful past. Because we are one Zambia, one nation. There's a past which we have, as it were. So for me, much as we want to remove the politicians from the table, they must be on the table. But all other key stakeholders must come to admonish the politicians, as it were. The church must do so. But the honors, the precursor to what we're talking about is the politician, the president himself. Because for me, for example, even, for example, to want to go, you're saying, no, I want to bring more laws to deal with this issue. You cannot legislate this problem. This problem must come to the table. That's where the solution will come from. Because by legislating against that, you put a lid on it. But the time to open, there'll be trouble. So there's need to dialogue. There's need to get to the table and thrash out the details. Have a big heart. Irrespective, you look at me as Sensio, I hate you. But for the common good of the Zambians, you should be able to sit with me on the table and say, Sensio, what's the issue? And also, you state to me, what's my issue?
The hate and the way someone was treated. I don't believe that President Hakainde Hichilema was mistreated because of his tribe. It's very careless talk, especially by himself. He loves fronting it, especially at his press conferences. So are you saying, Michael, first let's start with Levi Mwanawasa, who is from the similar grouping. He spoke very harshly against President Hakainde Hichilema. Rupia Banda, Michael Sata, Edgar Lungu. Are you saying he was harshly treated because of his tribe? I don't think so.
No. Actually, I think...
I have suffered, for me, twice. When I was, let me just give an example. When I was spokesperson and administrator for the former president. The former president, Frederick Chiluba, was at odds with President Mwanawasa. And me, the administrator, who had to go to these offices on behalf of Dr. Chiluba, suffered a lot of discrimination. You know, I was mistreated, isolated. I couldn't do certain things because people are afraid of the president. They don't want the president to know that Emmanuel Mwamba was sitting in a permanent secretary's office, yet they might be suspected that they are therefore supporting Dr. Chiluba. And currently, you know, I've been arrested, I've been brutalized, I lost my tooth, and I suffer these difficulties. But I don't see it that I'm suffering because of my tribe. So I'm suffering because of the polarized nature of our politics, where at that time President Mwanawasa was fighting Chiluba, and all of us suffered because of that. Here we are in opposition. You have a leader who's literally a dictator and doesn't appreciate what we, the opposition, are doing, and we're suffering this. But at no time did it cross that I'm being victimized because of my tribe.
So I think, let me put the clarity, is that the disparities I'm talking about are those borders of ethnic groupings. But the problem is that me, as Sensio, when I am brutalized, I should not use that on the basis of ethnic grouping to say my problem is the problem of the entire community. That shouldn't be the case. No. So for me is that my plea to President HH, he must be magnanimous enough, have a big heart. Look at, for example, on the issue of JJ. That's what I'm talking about, where the president goes and is a jury and the judge and the executioner, and look what's happening to JJ now, because he's the president. His words are final, his policy. What's happening to JJ right now? It's been taken back to Chipata to be charged. Well, because the president has said that. So what I'm saying is that let the president have big heart. Let him have forgiving heart. He is carrying, on his shoulder, he's not carrying UPND, he's carrying Zambia on his shoulder.
The church should go and pray for him.
He's carrying even people he hates. He's carrying them.
Correct.
He's responsible for them to preserve their rights. To preserve their rights. He was sown to protect, preserve and protect the Constitution. And the Constitution prescribes the rights of every Zambian, whether he likes him or not. It is his duty to do that. You know, maybe he can do it even beyond the scene. But I find it very sad that as a president, a Republican president, you go on the podium and single out an individual. It's quite unfortunate. That's what I'm saying. You should have a big heart. Yes, you could have been suffered at the hands of individuals, not as an ethnic group, but as an individual because of the ambition to become a president. But that should not deter him from doing what he's meant to do, to unite Zambia. Let him get down on his knees for God to help him, to have a big heart, to stretch him. Even when he meets me, I offended him. He's able to look me in the eyes and say, how can I help you, my brother? What's the issue, as it were? That's what we expect from him as a president.
Well spoken leader, well spoken. If the president has ears, he must listen. I've always held the thought, like you are saying, a president must rise above the petty issues. A president must recognize that he carries first the Constitution and the entire republic on his shoulder. He's a sovereign. He's a leader for all. He's a leader for all people. He's a leader for all. And that should be seen in his conduct, in his speech, in his appointment, and everything he does. What are your last words?
My last word is, in our language, we say, usogoreri, ukuzara, meaning that to be a leader is a dumping bin, because all kind of things will come your way. Like I said, you must have a big heart, because what you're carrying is not a personal aspiration. It's the aspiration for the 20 million Zambians. 20 million Zambians who want to put bread on their table. 20 million Zambians who want to have their medical bills or medicine provided for. 20 million Zambians who require that their inputs, agricultural inputs must be provided for. 20 million Zambians who are in dire need of the electricity to advance their entrepreneurial skills. And you cannot expend your time to start fighting auxiliary fights when their core issues to be addressed as a nation. So he needs to come out clean on this. He needs to be magnanimous, provide the leadership at this hour, because we are grappling with the budget.
Zambia at 60. Should an issue of ethnic be an issue?
No, not at all. It should not even be heard. It should not even be heard. That is why there's a need for him, because he's got the means and the mechanism to call everybody to a round table, as it were. He must extend an olive branch, because if today the opposition said so, he'll shun it. But he's got the latitude to extend olive branch to other stakeholders and invite the opposition and deal with the issues which are vexing us. Among them is tribalism, the high cost of living, and all these other issues. You know, you might find solution could come from in other places, as it were. So for me, the president, he's a president for all people. He's not a president for an individual. He's carrying on his shoulder the whole country, the aspiration for all the 20 million Zambians, those who want to go to school, those who want to go for tertiary education, those who have got ambitions to become politicians tomorrow. They're looking up to him. So his legacy should be remembered as the one when there was a gap and a crack, he united the country. But if he doesn't, he'll go back in history annals as the one who divided Zambia. Basically, that's that.
Thank you very much. Today, dear viewers, we're hosting Honorable Sensio Banda, former MP for Kasenengwa. He's a business executive, consultant, researcher, and is writing a book about ethnic and ethnicism in Zambia. And it's a difficult, very sensitive subject because of the circumstances that surround the matter. But I hope that it will spark positive debate on the matter. And I hope to see when the book is ready that you bring a copy here so that we can review the work that you'll have done. For you, until next time, God bless you, God bless Zambia, and shalom, shalom.